Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Road Trip Flip. I'm Andy, and of course, with me once again, I have the Road Trip Flip himself, Marvin. Marvin, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me once again. Always a pleasure.
I know we have, it's a motorcycle story today.
Yes.
So we've been talking about, it's always a variety of topics, but, vehicles notwithstanding, we've been talking about, with G20 van, we had Robbo's Tundra. We talked a little bit about, backstory and kind of how the whole road trip flip. And today we're actually talking about another flip that you did. And this is the two Hondas.
Yes.
So the two Hondas, and I had made a joke in another episode we did that you can't ride more than one bike at a time. The title here would suggest that maybe you were intending to or trying to. I know that's not what happened, but I know you're going to get to it, so I'm not trying to jump the gun. But you bought two Hondas. What is the story with all of this?
Okay, so a lot of what I do is based on just how I want to have fun. And I've been talking to buddies of mine about having off-road bikes. And the more I looked into it, I thought, okay, not only do I want to have an off-road bike, but I need a multi-purpose bike that is highway capable as well. So I started looking into bikes that could do that. And as we already have behind us, one of the episodes on a Sportster. Well, Harley Sportsters are kind of heavy. So I started doing some research, and I found that a Honda CX500 is a lot lighter than a Harley, and it just so happened that there's a community out there that is turning them into scramblers and cafe racers. And so I thought, wow, that's perfect, because Hondas they're everywhere, parts are everywhere, they're reliable, and I like the way they look. And it just so happens that the CX500 is a V twin, kind of like the Harleys that I am so fond of, but they're just transverse. They're turned sideways this way, kind of like a Moto Guzzi. So basically, long story short, I wanted an off-road bike, but I found two of them that are street bikes, and I was going to convert one of them, but I only found the one. It was a 79 CX500, and that would have been the easier conversion to a scrambler.
Right, but there was a second one, a GL?
GL 500, and GL is the beginning letters for Goldwing.
Yeah.
So it was a touring bike with full fairing, full bags, backrest. It had everything.
Yeah.
And it just so happened that one owner had two of them. He had a CX 500 and a GL 500.
Wow.
Same engine, same bike, slightly different frame configuration,
sure.
But basically the same bike. And the owner that had it, or had both of them, he stopped riding for health reasons, and he was young, but unfortunately he stopped riding. He just doesn't ride as much. Mm-hmm. So I started talking to his buddy that advertised them on Marketplace, and they're really close friends, Mario. And the more I talked to him about it, the more it sounded like, hey, this would be a great package deal. So I went back and forth with Mario a couple times, and then eventually ended up talking to the owner, Jeff. And wouldn't you know it, I'm booking a flight to Iowa.
So he sold you both bikes?
Yes.
And you bought both bikes?
Yes.
Even though you didn't really need both bikes?
Correct.
I'm not trying to be your mom right now.
I know.
But, that's kind of like the mom and me coming out like, okay, so you don't need both of these.
It's kind of like the last episode. Why these bikes again?
It's funny because it is that situation where you kind of like trip upon a deal and you're like, hold on now, I could get both of these?
Yes.
And you're not having to find them from separate people. And also, and again, not to go too big into this, but it's like if they come from the same person, that person has done a really good job on the upkeep and the maintenance of their vehicle, and they have two things to sell you, then you're going to get two reliable things.
Yes, and it turned out both of these bikes were in really good shape. And the fact that he wasn't riding them, it wasn't as much concerning as it was actually a good thing, because they were both low mileage. The paint on both of them were, it turned out that it would have been a tough conversion to a scrambler because it was so clean. And the package deal was such that these bikes would have been better off just being ridden the way they are. But, I still had that in mind. turn it in one of them into a scrambler.
So you had to fly to Sioux City? Where'd you have to fly to?
Sioux Falls.
Sioux Falls. I'm sorry. You had to go to Sioux Falls,
South Dakota first, because that was just north of where they were in Iowa. They're in western Iowa. Sioux Falls is just due north of there.
But how did you get 2 bikes back?
Oh,
so
I know.
Well, no, it's okay. I'm asking you. Like, I know, obviously you got them back, but how did you do that?
So I employed the efforts of a good friend of mine, Rick, and he would be my wingman. Rick is from Well, originally he's from Nebraska, but he lives in Nashville, and you'll see him a couple more times because I do. I hold my friends dear. I stay in touch with them. You'll see him a couple more times in a couple other episodes. But he is also an avid motorcycle rider, and we happen to fly helicopters together. We flew search and rescue up in Lemoore, and so he's another pilot. And he flies professionally now for FedEx. So I asked Rick, hey, you want to do a road trip with me? And he goes, say when. And the way it went was he flew into Sioux Falls. Jeff, the owner, picked him up. Actually, when I flew in the day before, Mario picked me up. And if ever you purchased a vehicle used from a seller, I got rockstar treatment. These guys were the best. They picked me up at the airport, which was an hour and 15 minutes away.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Brought me in. Jeff almost said, well, you could stay here. And I go, no, don't worry about that. I'll find a place. It just so happened I stayed back at Sioux Falls at the, I think it was National Guard base. So I got a $30 room that, military guys stayed in. So Rick flew in. And I was already there, stayed over a night, but the bikes needed tires and oil changes. So I had already, in all the talking back and forth with Jeff and Mario, I'd already purchased tires. I didn't even buy the bike. I purchased tires, and I had oil and filters sent to Jeff's house, to a bike I don't own. To Jeff's point, and people from... I might be generalizing, but these guys were like different than what I grew up with. I offered to send a deposit. Jeff wouldn't take it. He says, I'll take it off the market for you. If you're coming, you already bought tickets? And I had already...
Kind of the take a man at his word kind of thing.
Oh, yeah. It was basically a handshake over the phone.
Yeah, wow.
And that was huge to Jeff, and it was huge to me as well. The guy trusted me, and I trusted Jeff that, I had already seen pictures and video, and, I do my standard million questions, and there was no question that these bikes were going to be worthwhile. When I got there, did the tire changes, did the oil changes, and then I had already mapped everything out. Typical helicopter guy. I'd already mapped it out with Rick, and it just so happens that we flew so much together that it was a no-brainer. It was an easy trip to get from Iowa to Colorado, and that's where Rick would fly home. And I had to leave one of the bikes in Denver at a friend's house, not Denver, Boulder, and come back and get it. So I had to do 2 trips.
So Rick was with you for the first. That's right. Okay, I remember you sharing that with me. So he helped you get them to Boulder, and then you ended up going from Boulder down to San Diego. But tell me where you stopped, because then the other part of that is you had to go back to
Got it.
You had to go to a wedding or something, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'm trying to remember. Like you had to go to a wedding in Boulder, and then you came back. So that's how you got in there.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember. You didn't tell me everything. So
I know, and it was kind of like flying at the speed of heat. Sometimes details get lost, but. So the first leg went from Iowa to Nebraska to Boulder. In Nebraska, Rick and I stayed at a cabin at Lake McConaughey. And it just so happened that was a place where he used to go as a kid to go camping with his family. So he had fond memories there. In fact, I have footage of him standing in the lake as there's a guy, like maybe 30 yards away trying to fish, and Rick's just like got his, his pant legs rolled up, and the guys, it was pretty funny. Yeah, I don't think Rick was aware until later. I go, "Hey, Rick, there's a guy there trying to fish."
That guy's there trying to fish. And
yeah, what's he fishing for? Trout. So no, so we went to Lake McConaughey and then stayed in Colorado Springs. But on the way, I went to see a close friend of mine that I worked at the Penny Saver in Orange County with Mike Tavares. So I got a bunch of mics. Also in Colorado Springs was Mike Loopold. We know him as Loopy. So Rick, Mike, and the other Mike, we all met in Boulder, had lunch, and it just so happens that Loopy was also in the Navy. Loopy was the relief for Rick on the USS Duluth, and Rick was the outgoing air boss. The Duluth has a single spot ship deck on the back for landing helicopters, and so he was the air boss during his time on the ship. It was a non-flying tour for him, and so when he finished his time there, Loopy came in and relieved him. And we were never in the same squadron. We flew the same aircraft back in the day, but going back to the 6 degrees of separation from Marvin.
I was gonna say, once again, like how you have all these like circles converging.
Yeah.
Out of what might appear to be completely random circumstances.
Yeah,
but like, this happens all the time.
Yeah, it does. Loopy didn't know that Rick was my co-pilot or was my wingman for this trip.
No way.
Yeah, and he didn't find out until we got there. He goes, "Wait,
what?
I know you." Yeah, it was pretty funny.
That's so cool.
So yeah,
this just seems to happen every time you go somewhere, Marvin.
Oh my! There's so many more stories of that. I mean, I'm in Colorado Springs. Rick flies home to Nashville, and I had to stay in Colorado Springs for a couple of days because the weather in Durango, my next stop, was really bad.
Okay.
And I'm a fair weather rider. I'm not going to ride in driving rain. So I holed up for 2 days at Mike's house, Loopy's house, and ironically, he went to Kansas to go to a wedding, so I'm in this big house by myself.
By yourself at your friend's place?
Yeah. Yeah, at Loopy's house. So finally, I leave. I head home. I head to Durango, and through Durango, ended up at Steve Monroe's house in Flagstaff. After Flagstaff, ended up in Phoenix and saw Bob Carlson.
Yeah, Bob.
Jim McNeil. Jim McNeil and I were on the Radford High School tennis team together. We played tennis, and then
old Radford High.
That's right. And then I saw an old squadron mate of mine, Jackie, and her husband, Dell. I hadn't seen her since 1994.
Oh, wow.
4. Yeah. So through the magic of social media, we reconnected, and they said, "Hey, if you're passing through Phoenix, come see us." So I went to see Jackie and Dell. Greatest people. They put me up for a day. Kept on going early in the morning, made it home. The one thing that I had to deal with was when I passed through Gila Bend, got a flat on the rear tire. Brand new tires, got a flat.
Yeah, I was going to say, is this on the new tires you sent in? Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Picked up a nail, like a metal screw, and I'd never changed a motorcycle tire or fixed a flat before. I mean, I'm mechanically inclined, but I'd actually never physically done it. So
let alone on the side of the road, right?
Right, and in Gila Bend in 95-degree heat.
It's hot out.
Yeah, it was hot.
Jeez.
So that kind of delayed me for about an hour and a half, and then finally made it home. Had to go back to Denver and pick up the bike in Boulder at Mike Tavares' house. Spent a couple days with Mike. He had all my friends, we're all blessed, but I'm especially blessed by their position in life. Mike had a cabin in the mountains that I stayed in.
Wow.
Yeah, it was like a little mini resort. And so he put me up for a couple days, spent time with Mike that I hadn't spent in a long time, and toured through Boulder. And in fact, one interesting part of that was I rode the bike into town, into downtown Boulder, and it's real pretty. Boulder's pretty. Hadn't spent a whole lot of time there before. But we went to dinner in town, and on the way home, I had to ride home in the rain at night on mountain roads. That was interesting.
So Fairweather Marvin had to go downhill in the rain. That sounds like 0 for 2.
Yeah.
Knowing you.
Yeah. It was interesting, and I had traffic behind me, and I'm doing like 20
man.
miles an hour in the mountains.
Yeah, well, yeah. and it's an unfamiliar place to you, and the conditions aren't favorable.
Yeah, and I actually missed my turn getting into his neighborhood, so because it's dark.
So the first leg was that. Which bike did you take on the first leg back, and which is the one that's on the second one?
So the first leg was on the CX500. It was mostly the naked bike.
Yeah, got it. Okay.
And then the second leg was on the
GL,
the Silver Wing.
Okay.
Yeah, it's commonly known as a Silver Wing, not a Gold Wing.
So the Silver Wing is the one you're driving down this mountain in the rain.
Correct. Correct.
Well, at least it was a little more comfortable.
Well, so it happened again on the way to Durango. I was on the Silver Wing, and it might as well have been a cartoon because I could see the clouds off in the distance, right? And I could see the mountains, and the clouds are like marching along, and then the mountain punches a hole and just dumps buckets on me. And the video is, it doesn't do it justice because I think 2 or 3 trucks pulled up behind me under the only bridge for miles. Yeah, even four-wheeled vehicles stopped because the rain was so bad.
Wow.
I mean,
talk about torrential downpour.
Well, talk about fat, stinging rain. It was horrible.
Wow.
I mean, I couldn't see 10 feet in front of me, and I was only doing 15 miles an hour on a
wow.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. So initially I thought, okay, it's just a little bit of rain. I go under the overpass, and I keep on going thinking it's going to ease up. No, it got worse. It was pretty funny. So when you see the video, like I said, it doesn't do it justice because it's just dumping buckets on me. Before that trip, though, I forgot to mention one thing. When I landed in Denver to start the second trip, I ran into an old friend of mine from that same squadron that Jackie and her husband Jackie was in. I ran into Mike Rutledge. And this guy has an interesting story, and talk about a war hero. He's probably pretty humble about it if he were to hear me say that. But he was one of my crew chiefs, my crewman, and also he was a rescue swimmer in my aircraft way back in the early 90s. He left being a crew chief and became a Navy SEAL, and did maybe a full stint, maybe 3 years as a Navy SEAL. He left that and became an Army warrant officer and flew everything in the Army rotary wing inventory. And it just so happened that the squadron that he was in flew all of those missions. I think it was called the 160th SOAR, SOAR. I forget what that stands for, but it's the squadron that does all those missions, covert stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, and so I'm not doing it justice, but he has several interviews on YouTube, and I'll put a link in the description to one of them. But that guy's got a story to tell. He had a long and illustrious career in the military, and now he's a firebomber. He fights fires with airplanes. So I ran into him in Denver, and then I started the trip to head home the second time. So also on that trip, that's when on the second leg, I went to see Loopy get married, and I go to a wedding on a motorcycle in a suit. I'm wearing biker boots, but nobody can tell, and that was fun. Went to a wedding. I don't know how many times anybody else has gone to a wedding on a bike, but I did.
You have.
Yeah. That was fun. That trip, by the way, that second leg coming home, I went through New Mexico, and there's, I always thought that I would avoid New Mexico,
There's
parts of New Mexico that are absolutely beautiful.
Absolutely gorgeous, huh?
Yeah.
I think it doesn't get enough prominence for how like scenic parts of New Mexico are.
I went through some of the mountains, and I forget the name of the city, but on my way to Winslow, Arizona, I went through the New Mexico mountains, and you'll see the pictures. The red rocks and the mountains, and while I was there, though, the weirdest thing was I found the only building for miles was it looked like a storage building, and it was all graffitied. So I got some pictures of my bike in front of that. But after that, it was just nothing but trees and mountains. It was just beautiful. So went to Winslow, Arizona. Of course, had to see the the corner. Of course, that everybody. Have you ever been there?
No, I have. No, I actually haven't.
Okay, from the Eagles song.
Right.
It's the corner in Winslow, Arizona.
Yes.
And there's a truck there.
Yep.
So I had to take pictures next to the truck. That was cool. And then the one thing that I'll never have to go back to, there's this big meteor crater in the middle of nowhere west of Winslow. It's, I don't know how many thousands or hundreds of millions of years ago, a meteor hit the Earth, and there's a hole in the ground. And like a dummy, I go see it. Yeah, I know. So never have to go do that again. Fast forward, I get both of the bikes home after this trip because, going through Arizona and going through Flagstaff, there are some great roads there too. But I was ready to be home.
Yeah, that's a long trip.
Yeah, I mean, one of the last folks to see, Steve and Bob and Jackie and Jim, those were bonuses. But yeah, got home, got 2 bikes. Well, at the time, probably 5 bikes in the garage. Now, because I got 2 more. This is where we revisit another name. I'm telling the story to my buddy Doug. Well, as I'm telling him the story, I had created some history with the CX500, and I took it out for a joyride, and I'm telling Doug this story. I took it out for a joyride with another mutual friend of ours, Ramon, and Ramon's riding the CX500. I'm riding the GL, the Silver Wing, and we get out to East County, San Diego, and I see a puff of smoke come out of his tailpipe, and I see he's slowing down, and he's trying to keep it running. And I'm thinking, okay, I know something happened. So we both pull over, and it turns out the bike lost power. So we traded bikes. It's still rideable. I limp it home, and on my way home, I take a turn, and Ramon goes straight. But I was in a rush, so he didn't see me turn, and I'm on a road that there's nobody there.
Oh, no.
Absolutely nobody on the road. And I pull over, I take the seat off, I'm looking to see what happened. I'm thinking maybe I have a clogged air filter, I don't know, or I'm losing fuel or something. And as I'm troubleshooting, a Mercedes comes from the opposite direction and turns around. And I'm thinking, what's this all about? Because there's nobody on the road. There's nobody there, no traffic, except for this guy on a Mercedes. He pulls over behind me, and he says, hey, you need any help? And I go, well, I'm broken down. I don't know I'm just doing some troubleshooting. And he goes, well, I know the bike. Back in the 80s, my family used to own a Honda dealership. And that's my favorite bike. I know this bike like the back of my hand.
Get out of here.
No, yeah. And he was the lead.
How does this happen to you?
Yeah, I don't know.
Every time there's something that is so random that it seems like it's scripted. No, I know it's not.
This one.
I know it's not. There's no way.
Yeah. So he was the lead mechanic for a Honda delership in the 80s.
Get out of here, dude.
He lived up in the mountains, in the San Diego mountains, because he left the coast, and he's a vintage motorcycle mechanic now, and he has a shop up there. And so he says, well, I'll tell you what, after I explained to him what happened, he says, well, you're probably out of gas because you're only running on one cylinder and it's dumping twice as much fuel. And so wouldn't you know it? I look in the tank; it's empty.
There you go. Yeah.
It's
Wow.
empty. So I leave the bike. He takes me to a gas station. We buy a gallon of water. I dump it out. I know it doesn't sound legal, but I fill the water jug with gas. Go back, get the bike. The guy follows me the whole time, and that guy turned out to be a guardian angel, my buddy Keith, and we're still in touch now. Even though as I'm telling Doug this story, Doug says, "Why don't you sell me that bike? I'll fix it." Because I had parked it. I hadn't.
Oh.
I started taking stuff apart, guided by Keith.
Right.
After I got it home, because he, obviously, he didn't follow me all the way home, but I made it home.
Well, sure. But so wait, is it Doug's now?
It is Doug's. Doug bought it.
Oh, no way.
Doug the mechanic. And he's a Honda. Remember, I don't know if you remember me telling you, but he used to race for Honda.
Yeah.
So he's a Honda guy.
So he has it now.
Doug bought it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I don't think I knew that part.
Yeah. No. The more I'm telling him, because obviously he bought Marcy's Triumph.
Right.
This guy he's just so well versed in so many different motorcycles.
Yeah.
But Triumph and Honda are his two mainstays.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
So Doug has it now, and he has already fixed the issues that caused, because it was an electrical problem. It wasn't gas. Yeah, he rewired it. He actually rewired it. Put new tires on it.
Yeah,
I still had that plug in it.
Right.
I plugged the tire, and it's still a clean bike. He was thinking he was going to turn it into a scrambler too, but it was too nice of a bike, so he's not doing anything to it. Just
so it's in the same state as it were as when you got it.
Yes, it's just now it's running, because when I sold it to him, it wasn't.
Well, so it's one thing to go buy two bikes and then to have the adventure of bringing them both back, but you've shared some things on this particular journey that are just somewhat sketchy, like that torrential downpour of rain, the one going down the mountain in rain again, or prior to that, a flat tire, the bike with the mechanic stop. You had to have learned something along the way.
Big time.
There's rarely a trip where these things are happening where you just come home, I didn't, no lessons learned, just yep, next story.
No, there was a lot to be learned. First, we'll talk about the geography. States that I didn't think were worth visiting definitely are worth visiting. Iowa, Nebraska. Haven't explored North Dakota enough, but I'm going back. Colorado, New Mexico. All of those states were just absolutely gorgeous. Also, the concept of gratitude comes up. The meeting with Keith, being safe during all these torrential downpours, or just riding at night in the rain in unfamiliar territory, coming back safe. There's a lot to be thankful for there.
Yeah, for sure.
And then the people that I went to see. There's so many people that I'm grateful to have in my life. I even got reacquainted with other pilots at Loopy's wedding that I hadn't seen since the 90s.
Wow.
Yeah, Mike, our flight surgeon, Tony, Mike's wife, haven't seen them since the 90s, and we sat at the same table. That was fun.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's really awesome.
Yeah, but and then being able to stay true to my whole thing here, which is I was able to sell the bikes. I sold the Silverwing too.
Well, but hold on though. Wait, hold on. So I thought part of this story was that you were looking for bikes to make a scrambler.
Yes.
And now you don't have either one of them.
No, I don't, because the CX 500, it was too nice. And
yeah, okay, you mentioned it didn't have enough things.
Well, so what we were talking about before, having an audience that wants these bikes.
Yeah.
I didn't even ask Doug if he wanted to buy it. He says,
right, just waving cash. Here you go. I'll take it.
Here, take my money. Yeah, no, and so because I had sold, so I sold the Silverwing first, and that was an interesting side note too, because when I advertised it, I wrote the ad purely to entertain myself, and so I wrote it from the standpoint of, if you can imagine, do you remember the Twilight Zone?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Rod Serling's voice.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what's in my head as
Yeah.
I'm writing the ad for the silver one.
That's awesome.
The year is 1982. And I mentioned Michael Jackson's Thriller.
Yeah, yeah.
The Falkland War broke out.
Mm-hmm.
And then this was the part that was entertaining to me. I said there was a brief population spike in the early 1980s, solely attributable to this bike. Because if you owned one of these bikes, your machismo went up.
Yeah, yeah.
So I get a text or a message from Francisco.
Yeah.
And it was probably one of the simplest sales I'd ever made, because he says, "Hey, can I come see it?"
Yeah.
And he didn't even ask me any questions.
Wow.
Yeah. He comes over and he says, well, he's wearing shorts and Crocs when he shows up.
To buy a motorcycle?
Yeah.
Okay.
But he's in a pickup truck.
So he clearly wasn't looking to ride it. Well, maybe he was looking to ride it. I don't know. Who am I to judge?
I was thinking maybe he had pants and
shorts and Crocs.
Boots. Yeah, I know.
Okay.
Maybe he had boots in the truck. But he says, "Hey, do you mind taking it up and down the street for me?" And I said, "Sure." So I hop on, start it up, blast up the street, come right back. And he goes, "Okay, I'll take it. How much you want?" Yeah, it was 15. I'm not kidding. 15 minutes start to finish, and no mention of the ad that I wrote.
Sure.
Like I said, that was just really for my entertainment anyway. So 15 minutes later, we're loading it in his truck.
Mission accomplished. You got yourself entertained by writing the ad that way, and you sold the bike quick.
Yeah, it's pretty quick. And I didn't gouge the guy. My common theme with all of these bikes is, hey, pass some on to the next guy. Yeah. And I think that's why he said, "Hey, I'll take it."
Yeah, that's so cool.
It was just like that.
That's so, and that's actually probably why Jeff sold these to you, because he probably had that same idea. Like, oh, this guy wants these. He's gonna do something with them. Like that's like that. It's like that. Not like a rock rolling downhill, but it just goes on and on.
Yeah.
And I don't know where they're gonna end up. We got Doug with one and Francisco with the other. Maybe they'll sell them. Maybe they'll keep them. But
and I told Jeff from the very beginning, and Mario, hey, I might ride it for a little bit, but eventually I'm probably going to pass it on to the next enthusiast, which is exactly what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so they knew, they knew. It's not like I'm, being shifty about anything.
Yeah.
Well,
and to some degree, you don't ever have to tell them what you're going to do at all. I think you just do that out of the courtesy and the respect of being a fellow enthusiast.
Exactly.
And telling someone that you're buying it and it will be cared for while it's in your care, and then it's going to go into the next awesome owner.
And that's how I acquired it, because I knew that they cared for these bikes
too.
Yeah. And these guys were, as far as Jeff and Mario, they're not just sellers.
Yeah.
They became friends.
Yeah.
I'm still in touch with them. So if you guys are watching this now.
Yeah. This is your episode, guys. This is it.
That's right.
Well, Marvin, this is super cool to hear about these. I know we had kind of talked about these ones a while ago, and you told me there's like a lot of details in this one, a lot of different places. Super fascinating having one leg of the trip, and then a second leg, and then returning with both, selling both.
Yeah.
I am very curious though. I do still hope that while we're on this pursuit of this project, that we can talk about an eventual scrambler build.
It's coming.
And we can document it, and we can watch you build it and then see you enjoy it. I cannot wait to see that.
It's coming for sure.
Awesome.
Hey folks, thanks yet again for stopping by. I appreciate your visit. Do me a favor, like and subscribe, and hit the notification bell so that you know when the next one's coming. And leave me a comment, and I'd be happy to chat with you. If you have any questions or comments, any constructive criticism, I'm open. Until next time, I'll see you on the flip side.